But before we jump, let's start a little bit. Who is Anna, and what has sort of shaped you to become a change management practitioner? Or what's your story?
It's a long story. I'm a reluctant engineer, and I started working in the mid-'80s. My first work was as a product specialist for hard disk drives at Ericsson. And I got the hottest, the new hard disk drive. It was this big. It weighed 10 kilos, and it contained, hold on to your horses.
How many kilobytes?
Yeah, well, 30. And it was so hot. And I endured for 9 months.
Hot from a temperature point of view, not
yes,
from a sexy point of view.
Sexy.
Hot, because it had fans, but it's still.
Yeah.
You couldn't touch it.
I thought you meant sexy, but you meant it was actually hot.
I sort of meant both, but he understood the other part as well.
Yes.
And I endured that for 9 months. But I'm not a product specialist. I'm not really an engineer. So I started working as sales and marketing. It was then Televerket. Now it's Telia. And at that point in time, organizations started to have a need to connect their networks and their own switchboards. It was extremely expensive with data, extremely expensive making phone calls. And most of all, when you wanted to add new networks, you had to wait a couple of months for Telia to arrive. So radio links was what I worked with. And that was actually a new business for Telia. They actually sold the radio links to the organizations. So instead of owning the backbone, which has always been their business, they sold the radio links. So that was at the time when you only could buy from Televerket, end of the 80s. And that's how I got into networking, because what you wanted to do with the radio links was to connect networks. And in the beginning of the 90s, I started working for a company called UpNet. They were the first in Sweden to work with Cisco routers.
Yeah, I remember that. UpNet brought Cisco to the Nordics, I believe.
Yes.
Before Cisco even had offices or anything.
Yeah.
Here, right?
Yeah. Yeah, when I joined in 92, UpNet, I think I was number 18. And when I left 2000, we were 4,500 people. Yeah. And Cisco in Sweden at that point was one guy, and then it became 3 quite quickly. And that was a time, John Chambers came to visit us because Sweden was so far ahead. We really wanted to try out new technology.
And I think UpNet, you built SUNET, right?
Yeah, SUNET, the university backbone.
Which is the first internet or real backbone of telco communications in Sweden, right?
Yeah, well, the defense organization might have had one as well, but yeah. And so SUNET and Televerket, yeah. When my kids that are 24 and 27, when they mess with me because I'm a dinosaur using my smartphone, I say, well, you can mock me, but I built the internet. So that's the only thing that I can tell them. So that was really an exciting time because networking was really expanding. And that was at the same time that Telia was not the only supplier of backbones and network connections. You got all the other companies coming in, building networks. So it was really an exciting time. We built some really big projects.
And of course, we are talking now, your storytelling is overlapping with the digitalization journey of Sweden, because here we are now, UpNet moving Cisco in, and then we move forward to 97, 99, and here we have the beginning of the internet bubble, and a massive upside of sort of building, doing new backbones for Handelsbanken, stuff like this, building up. There were several internet operators coming up, building both, I guess, the communication setup, but the whole storage, the whole, I guess, Sun servers setups and all that, right?
Yeah.
Right in the middle of the internet bubble.
Yeah. Yeah, it was. That was actually before the internet bubble,
yes.
And I remember
the infrastructure for the internet bubble.
Yeah, I was a sales manager going to the end of the 90s, and we had some strict rules when we had new customers. And one of my sales guys, he came to me and said, "And I have to talk about you. I have a customer that wants to buy some Cisco routers, but when I search their credibility, it's a guy in a room in Lund. It seems to be a student.
Maybe Bredbandsbolaget."
And we looked into this and said, okay, let's set up a meeting in here. And he had big plans, and it sounded crazy. But we looked at it and said, it's not that much money. Go sell him the router. And that became one of the biggest customers of Merkantil at the end of the 90s.
Yeah, there was this Birgersson, Bredbandsbolaget, buying his infrastructure from you and your sales guy.
Yeah.
Super cool.
Yeah, really.
And now we are sort of 99, 2000, somewhere there. And what's up? What's the next?
It was a fantastic journey to be both because UpNet grew and the whole revolution of the industry, and we everybody that worked there, we grew as professionals and as humans, but also to get all the structures. How do we sell in a good way? How do we deliver? Because there were huge projects, so we really started working with product management and having really good consultant and project managers. So I knew when I sold big projects that okay, I have the consultants and I have the project managers, and the customers are going to be satisfied. And then I was looking for some new challenge, and UpNet was Merkantil. It was a bit too big. It wasn't the same feeling. So I switched working with ERP systems. And I did that until I started working with Johan Pro Sales. And of course, I thought that it's the same. We have project managers and we deliver, and we have the customer requirements, and found a completely new world where you could deliver according to what they asked, and still they weren't satisfied. The last years I worked specifically with the automotive industry, an industry that's very not at the forefront of technology outside of the cars. Also at that time it was a change, because before you had a monopoly. If you sold Saab in a whole region, and that was all that you could sell. And when they joined with Opel, you could have both. But then EU decided anybody that fulfills the requirement can sell a brand. So the systems that had previously been built were built by Saab and placed at the dealers. Now there was a need for a system that interoperated with several manufacturers and a new generation of systems. And people were so frustrated.
So we're talking about the core ERP systems in automotive.
Yeah.
What type of systems is that?
For selling a car, putting all the
Dealer
pieces together.
Configurator.
The configurator, but also then sending the order to the car factory to handle all the accounting, when you come in for service and maintenance, and all your spare parts. To have that in a system that could handle that for different makes.
Several types of cars.
Yeah, several types of cars. And the previous systems, they had worked with them for maybe 10, 15 years, and they were optimized for one for example, Saab or Ford or Volvo, whatever. And now they got a very modern system that was really great, and people were so frustrated. People sat crying at their desks. And when I went out and sat down, it was, okay, what's happened? We said something is wrong with the system. It does not work. And our consultants said, yes, they do work, and we have trained them. And people tried to do exactly what they had done in the old system. They printed papers, even if it was supposed to, don't print, everything is stored, and it's sent to the guy down at spare parts. You don't have to walk over there with a paper.
So I hear a journey from systems to project, from project to change management.
Yeah. And at that time, I didn't know change management. I just knew that customers were frustrated and I was frustrated. So that was really, I saw that there is a need for something else.
So this whole idea of adoption, and to get, it's not the technology that makes you rich or makes the car or the person or the customer happy. It's when they adopt it and can use it and that's when the value comes as a core principle.
Yes, definitely. And as humans in a workplace, what we think is value is value for me, for doing my task. And for these kinds of systems, that's the whole flow. And sometimes when we drive change and adopt new ways of working and change the processes, it might not be the best for me, but on a whole,
it's fantastic.
Yeah.
But then this is a different type of change. Very exciting. But before we get into the whole topic of change, I'm just dying to get there. But it's
I can tell.
But it's also so. Then you did that, and what next?
Then I changed profession from sales to being a consultant. At that point, I didn't know I changed my profession. I just thought that I would go and apply when I knew about sales and the support customers. But working as a consultant is a very different role. Instead of being the one in charge and actually tell people what to do, you are just by their side, trying to encourage them.
Customers are always right in that sense.
Yeah, but you are not the one doing it. You are helping the customer do it.
And this is important now. We talk about one type of consultancy maybe when you are hired to code something, and you are doing the work and you give them a piece of code. But if you want to get a sales organization to sell more, Anna or Henrik is not going to in and do the sales. So whatever we do is about enabling and securing that the sales manager is doing the right thing and the sales guy is doing the right thing. So it's different from a technology consulting to change ultimately.
Yeah. And no matter what kind of change, even in working in new processes or using new ERP systems, I can be there in support, but it's always the manager that follow up and encourage and has to work with the individual. And sometimes when you, as a change manager, arrive at a customer and say, oh, you're here to save us. You are now going to do the change. So the kind of consultants that we were at ProSales, that was the kind of consultant that helps the customer achieve by themselves, but with guidance and support. And also a big change, especially being in sales, where you really lead teams and you win deals and you go for success. When you work as a consultant, when there is success, it is the customer. You are just a bystander. And that was a big change in the beginning to adopt to that, to just say, yeah, well done.
So so you worked several years with ProSales, and you did. And what type of clients were you working with? And what were the type of projects? What do you do as a consultant within sales change management?
The Ericsson, the Core 3, the training on how Ericsson should drive their sales projects involving people from change, delivery, and the project. I haven't even started drinking my wine. No. I can't speak. So a lot of projects with Ericsson actually facilitating workshops where we did these business cases with them, and we did that around the globe. Also Scania Mining that were driving a new way of selling. Instead of selling trucks and buses and motors, they were working towards an industry with all the products. So a completely new way of selling. We work with Ricoh in a change in their situation, going from selling copy machines to actually being an IT supplier.
So really their whole offering changed, and therefore the whole way of selling needed to change.
Yeah. So those were some of the biggest, but also working with some of the newspapers and banks and different kinds of customers.
So it was change management in relation to a specific domain of sales operations, you could say.
Yeah.
And then I understand that at some time you went after ProSales and started to apply change and working with other industries. So when was that, and how did that come about?
That was 2014, after 7 years on ProSales. And really, I knew sales. So driving change and applying that to sales was my comfort zone, after a while at least, when I had learned to be a consultant. But then to say, okay, can I do this in any context? So working with companies where in completely different industries and different kinds of changes, but still where you need to change the way people work, the way people behave.
Yeah, so the common denominator here is that we want to address behavior and ways of working. And here we have a salesman's role or a sales manager's roles. But of course, if you are changing system in the accounting or the finance role, is change management and adopting the new way of working that comes with whatever change is needed, wherever new system is coming in.
Yeah, so I since 2016, I have my own company and work in all kinds of change management projects. So from GDPR, that's some people think that might be just technicalities, but it's all about change in behaviors, and that's where the really tough part is. Still working with changes for sales organizations. What we saw around 2010, where more and more sales moved to being e-business, what is then the role of a traditional salesperson? Sometimes I've also worked with municipalities where a lot of digitalization, AI, and that affects behaviors in different ways.
So would you say that more and more of your work is driven on the basis of digitalization, job descriptions change? Yeah. And based on that, in order to get value out of digitalization, change management in connection with this is one core part of what you really work with on a daily basis.
Yeah. Yes, it is. Yeah, today it is.
And we're soon going to jump in, but I think one small paragraph before we go into deeper other topics. Tell me a little bit about how you work and organize your company, because I think you're working in a super relevant modern way, in constellations fitting for the need at hand. Could you elaborate on how you thought about your own entrepreneurship and how do you work, to effect change, which is of course maybe sometimes more than Anna needed.
Yeah, I wanted to be able to pick the projects that I engage in and the customers that I work with. Not so much, this company, but these kind of people. Where do I want to engage? And also to be able to do different projects and then work together with people that I really trust and that can support me with other kinds of expertise or more of what I have when that is needed. So today sometimes I'm asked by somebody to fill in their project and I bring in people that I trust. I have an old colleague from Upnet. We started working together in 92. That's many years, and we always said that when we have our own companies, we will be working together. Yeah, we will. So now we are. So I work with project managers, change managers, sales professionals to really work with the customers, depending on what the customer needs. And I don't have this is the way I offer to work with you. Sometimes I go in and take the role as the change manager in a project or in a change. Sometimes I train project managers or leaders in change management. Sometimes it's about giving a lecture or just being a speaker at a conference. And sometimes it's about coaching throughout time for people that struggle with change. So I can adopt that to what the customer needs. I think that was important. Coming from sales, it's all about the customer. But of course, what do I think is fun? I want to work with what makes me tick.